About 10 years ago, I said in a talk once when we were discussing this, I mentioned, you know what, I think we're going to look back upon our mobile devices and social media the same way we look back upon cigarettes. Would you agree with that statement? Or like, how was I, like, what do you think?
Yes, and we need to look no further than the litigation that's happening right now. Social media litigation is the new tobacco litigation. We are seeing many companies raising some flags about this, right? I think about MoMA, which is Moms Against Media Addiction. They are the ones that are kind of become the Mothers Against Drunk Driving sort of equivalent. And so they are also raising some really key red flags about the impact of social media addiction and algorithms on the impact of young people. And so I do think that we're seeing some advocacy around this, but we're also seeing some important litigation that's happening too. And I don't think this is going to change until at a legislative level, we see that these companies have some guardrails. And so at present, there are just no guardrails, right? So they are able to do whatever they want without consequence. And the consequences have been pretty catastrophic in my view.
I read a study last week that seemed to indicate that there's a skyrocketing rate of early onset dementia and Alzheimer's in people 30 to 44 years old in our society. Would be interested in, of course, they can't say that it's caused by what we're talking about, but it's an interesting correlation there, or maybe some associations, if you will. But I'd love your thoughts on that. If you're not familiar with the study, that's totally fine. I just think it's curious that this volume of data is now beginning to emerge, showing us that, yeah, this is actually having a real, measurable, catastrophic negative impact on our physiology and our psychology. But just any thoughts from you on that study I happened to see last week?
Yeah, of course. I mean, this also has to do a lot to do with metabolic function, right? And so anytime there's that mitochondrial stress, mitochondrial dysfunction in the system, there's a really big impact on that. And that is the part of our cells that allows us to keep going and have that energy, right? So we're seeing this big energy depletion that's occurring, but also not enough of the resources internally to replace or to counteract, right, those effects.
I've got an 11-year-old boy. I've got a 15-year-old girl. So perhaps at this point we can just like dive into a little bit of free Greg Wells family counseling, if you will. And if you had a 15-year-old daughter, what would you be doing right now? Like, what would you be thinking? What would you counsel me to do? And by the way, she's doing really, really well, doesn't like it, sees the problems that her friends are facing as a result of it. I think she's navigating it really, really well. But of course, we're concerned. And I would love your thoughts on, if you had a teenager right now, how would you be handling this?
I think there's many great solutions out there, so I'm happy to that we pivoted towards solutions. I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing among young girls, especially at the teen level, I would say that the biggest piece of guidance that I'm giving right now, probably in just like heaping doses, is stop fighting over text message. These are things and conversations place in person. We are seeing an epidemic of people who are not able to sort through real time, real problems in friendship or with their teachers, but they're just doing a lot of it over technology, right? And so, in a lot of ways, technology lowers the bar and makes it easier for kids to have that conversation. Or if it's scripted by ChatGPT, it's easier, right, to solve problems that way. And so, it's such an issue that there's even a coined term for this called fexting, fighting over text message. And we're seeing trying to work out their issues over group chats or on Snapchat or in the DMs on Instagram, trying to sort it out, and they keep coming up with all these issues of why isn't this working? Well, that's because issues are solved in person, and so face-to-face communication, I think, is a really important milestone for young people to work with, right? So if we just think about milestones in general, so this is for girls and boys, but I think that middle school is the time where, of course, academics, we want to get that going. But the most important project of a middle schooler is to work on how to be in groups and how to function in healthy relationships. And so at the 15-year-old level, that's where we can add on the executive functions. That's where we can add on the pieces around thinking ahead and stress management and emotion regulation. But if you don't have the foundation of co-regulation, which happens in relationships, then your upper top of your brain just doesn't stand a chance to get there. And so I think kids, as much as possible, need to be participating in social hobbies. We've seen a big increase in solo hobbies, but kids need to be swimming in a sea of social, and they need to be with other people. So social group needs to be intact. We need to also figure out ways that we can help kids be offline as much as possible. As I was saying, that will not be successful unless there's something to replace it with. So I do think that we are back to a place where adults need to have a heavy hand in being a part of the social lives of young people. Not to overschedule or not to force friendships, but to be that person that says you need to be around other people. This is your job right now as a young person, is to be around other people and right getting into stuff together, right? Whether that's taking risks, whether that's having hard conversations, whether that's sorting through a bit of drama and conflict. But this is the time that they learn those skills. Otherwise, they use it or lose it.
So it's really around not necessarily doing your relational engagements via our devices, but getting out into the world to build these experiences together. Rock climbing, going for a bite to eat, going for coffee, going for a walk, doing something in the real world together might be a really critical thing for all of us to facilitate for ourselves, but especially for our children. I realize it's difficult. People are busy. There's so much going on. So, driving your child to someone's house to hang out is we have to do that type of stuff right now.
Absolutely. I would say the biggest pro of doing so is that it helps them build those muscles that we're talking about. And so kids need real world interactions to build healthy, balanced brains, right? So they need interactions with adults, they need interactions with their peers, people their age, and also doing hard life tasks, right? So having a struggle to overcome is an important milestone for them to be figuring out. And the problem with technology is that it really lowers the bar on what becomes hard. And so in a lot of ways, we're skipping the struggle and we're choosing what's easy and immediate. And so we see a lot of kids now and want everything to be urgent and happen yesterday. And so in a sense, a lot of this is also about slowing things down and ensuring that they're also getting practice flexing those muscles around things like patience and waiting and delaying the gratification, for example.
I love to hear the words, "I'm so bored," from my kids. So when you're talking about like waiting and doing nothing, like when they say, "Oh, I'm so bored," I'm like, fantastic. That is like the ultimate spark for creativity. And they're like, "I hate my dad," right? So the slowing down piece is so huge.
It is. And I just to translate that into science terms, when we are bored, the default mode network in our brain turns on. And so we need to have the default network in our brain is turned on as much as possible. That helps us with emotion regulation. That helps us with stress management. That also helps us in managing and mitigating distractions as well. And so the problem, as I see it, just from a scientific level, is that we are seeing a lot of kids who don't have enough time and experience with the default mode network in their brain turned on. And so here's how to turn it on. You turn it on by being bored, by waiting, by staring out the window, by taking a nap instead of scrolling on your phone, by slowing life down to a point where your brain can actually learn, I have time to process things. If everything is immediate and everything needs to be impulsive, then I'm also seeing a lot of kids where the default mode network is turned off and the distress is turned on. And so when combination occurs, that also sets kids up for a lot of failure because they don't have the practice of knowing and recognizing this discomfort is not bad. This hard thing is the world. This really challenging test that I'm about to take doesn't mean that I'm automatically going to fail just because I don't know what's going to be on it, for example. So it also allows us to tolerate uncertainty. When we can tolerate uncertainty, then the distraction, disconnection, distress also allows us to falls into place.
So this helps us to navigate feelings of distress, of anxiety, because we exist in a narrow band of experiences in the world. So when we slow down, when we get off our devices, when we engage in the real world, we can be either maybe even a little bit happier and maybe even a little bit more bored, which then opens up the possibility of learning how to regulate our emotions at the highest highs and the lowest lows a little bit better. Am I understanding that correctly?
Brilliant. Absolutely. And I think that it can also be mitigated. And I'm not sure if you want to go here, but we're going to take it there. I do think this is also part of a generational shift in parenting. And I think that we're seeing a big shift towards concierge parenting and snowplow parenting, where we just remove and clear the path for kids and our own distress as adults. We don't want to see our kids in stress or see our kids in struggle. And so then we remove the hurdles, we remove all the speed bumps of life, whether that's emailing the teacher to get them out of something, or whether that's, you know, texting their friends to schedule hangouts for them. We're essentially removing all these discomforting parts of life, but not things that are dangerous, right? So we want to make a distinction between what is uncomfortable and danger, right? So we want to ask ourselves, discomfort or is this danger? When it's danger, that of course we want to step in and help and protect them. But if it's just discomfort, we can survive discomfort. And we also want to inspire our kids to be able to do that too. We do that by building that muscle, right? By getting over the hard things. Sometimes we forget that frustration is required for resilience. We need to be able to be frustrated to be able to complete a task and then learn that muscle of resilience, right? To overcome something.
I take my kids swimming with sharks, so clearly I'm missing the danger piece. But we'll park that for a second. A little while ago was thinking, I don't know if I've said this, and I might offend some people by saying it, but I'm going to go for it anyway. Like, kids are not allowed to fail in school anymore. We give them 8th place trophies for everything. We're constantly telling them how amazing they are, and they go to university or high school and they struggle slightly in a quiz, and as a result they experience high levels of anxiety in response to a small stimulus from the environment that may not be entirely comfortable. I think that that's like, of course, thoughts on what I just said, which could be entirely wrong. I may have misinterpreted things. I may have expressed it the wrong way. This is not my expertise, which is why we were talking to you today. But I just look at that. I'm like, well, of course that they're struggling because they're never allowed to fail.
Yeah. And then in addition to that, then we provide accommodations for their perceived failure or any discomfort that they feel in their brain and their body. And so I do think that in a lot of ways we have over accommodated kids to the point where kids just aren't again learning that muscle. But I think the reason why we've done that, and I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. I think the reason why we've done that is because the bar has really shifted, and we are no longer able to discern, in my view, what is normal, what is healthy development, what we should expect at this age, and what is cause for. And so I'm doing a lot of work with families right now around assessment. That is the first step in my process, is just doing a really good thorough assessment so we can figure out, is this normal problems in living? Is this normal discomfort? Is this normal thoughts and feelings for this age? Or is this cause for concern? And I do think that the line is really blurred on that, right? And I do, although controversial, I do think that we have also over-indexed on the mental health terminology, and I think that we have social media for that, right? If everyone is a narcissist, then no one is a narcissist, right? If everyone is ADHD, then this is our normal, right? The bar shifts. And so what I'm thinking about is the ways that we use language to communicate with each other has also been shifted by this really just heavy dose of tech communication that we've had with each other, such that I think it has really messed up a lot of the systems that were already in place. But the challenge is that we don't have any new systems to replace them. And so I think we've created this patchwork system where we've said that, oh yeah, go see a psychologist, get in accommodations, and then everything will be fine. But when over 50% of a class has accommodations, what are we doing? Is that actually helping the people who truly need it? Or are we just simply lowering the bar or changing the entire game altogether? So I think that education, again, has really been affected by this.